So whether you are a third generation mom and pop that's drilling in your own hometown, or you're an integrated super major that can drill all over the world, you have to make sure that you are doing everything right every single day. Now, on the other side, all they have to say is, see, I told you. So if there's one incident somewhere, anywhere, see, I told you. They have to be right once. We have to be right every single day. And so that's the accountability that we are under and frankly should be under. This isn't a willy-nilly Wild West industry. It's extremely regulated. The challenge for us is that every time the wind blows, something changes. This is a commodity-based industry, meaning other people tell us the price for our product. And so when you have that kind of uncertainty, what we're looking for is that regulatory certainty so that we do have fair, common sense rules of the road. That'll allow our operators to do what they do best, which is find, lift, and ship hydrocarbons for the betterment of our economy and our society.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
Well, thanks for being with us on another episode of American Potential. In 1814, the first crude oil was found in Ohio by accident by two guys looking for salt brine. Now, imagine looking for salt brine and finding oil. As the industry in Ohio grew, it became the largest oil producer in the world until oil was discovered in Texas. Now, since then, the energy sector in Ohio has expanded to encompass a variety of energy sources, from traditional fossil fuels like oil and natural gas, alongside renewable energy sources such as wind and solar power. The state plays a pivotal role in supplying electricity to both its residents and neighboring regions. Additionally, Ohio has made strides in energy efficiency to make sure that the state has reliable and sustainable sources of energy. I want to welcome Mike Chadsey, who is the Director of External Affairs for the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, to talk more about the energy industry in Ohio. Mike, thanks for being with us.
Jeff, it's great to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, now I'm a little worried about this because Monica does do a little bit of questions beforehand to find some stuff. And it says you're a certified scuba diver and you've done night and cave diving. Now, listen, that seems very frightening to me. Why would you do that? Why would any good, sane human being dive into a cave? Explain this to us.
Well, I think there's the point right there. I'm not, and cave is one, ice diving, all kinds of just, I get into the water. I'm a ginger, right? So I don't just hang out on the beach to sunburn. If I'm going to the ocean, I'm going in the ocean. And since I burn so easily, I have to go into a cave to really enjoy the water. So that's just me.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, you have to have some harrowing. I mean, has there been a harrowing experience in a cave? There has to be. Come on.
Well, that, and I can give you stories when we've been shipwreck diving off the coast and ice diving and net diving, deep diving. I got all kinds of shenanigans and stories over the years.
Yeah. Well, I hunt bears and mountain lions and stuff like that. And some people think that's crazy, but that is not crazy compared to cave diving and night diving. I'm sorry. That's just nuts. But anyway, now that we've determined you are an expert on being crazy about stuff like that, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you ended up working in the energy business. How'd you get into this business?
Well, along those same lines, it was just a little crazy. I happened to be at the right place at the right time. So I came from a local government, state government. I'd worked for a variety of elected officials over the years, either politically or officially. And at the time that oil and gas was starting in Ohio, I was working in the lieutenant governor's office. It's a very small office where you have to know a little bit about a lot. And I was assigned to kind of advance the lieutenant governor and represent her at an energy event in Columbus, of all places. And so I went, the typical staff where I'm half paying attention to the speaker, half looking at my phone, trying to figure out what I'm doing for lunch. But more and more of the comments from the stage just kept catching my attention. At one point, there was a speaker, Aubrey McClendon, the former CEO of Chesapeake, said, look, folks, bottom line, this is going to be the biggest thing to hit Ohio since the plow. Well, I looked up and said, hey, what's going on here? And I just spent the rest of the day learning about the oil and gas industry, our history, what potential we had, the various companies that were here and were looking to come here. And I thought, energy is fascinating. And that was a topic I worked on all through all my time. And I thought, this is a great opportunity, and ended up meeting the current president of the association at the time and got to know Tom. And 2 weeks later, he said, hey, we're going to need a guy that does what you do, travel around the state and talk about how important this is. Why don't you come work for me? Little did I know that was a great opportunity. And 12 years later, I'm still here, still talking about it, and as excited as ever.
Well, that's a great story. I mean, most people, when they think of energy producing state, I mean, first of all, they think of Texas, because Texas wants you to think about them all the time, right? No matter what it is about. Yeah. They're good. They're pretty good. And they admit that they're good at that. And then, people think if it's not Texas, it's Alaska, and then, of course, California was always pro production until the last many decades, and then they've tried to shut it down. But people don't think of Ohio. But talk about how much Ohio has done in the energy sector.
Well, you alluded to it. I mean, the first discovery of crude oil in the entire United States was in a little place in Caldwell in Noble County in 1814. And then you fast forward a number of years and look at what John D. Rockefeller did. At one point, Ohio was the world's largest crude oil producer. Fast forward again, and you look through some of the different booms and ebbs and flows we've had. And then you fast forward all the way into shale development, where if you put Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia as our own country, and I'm not suggesting that, although sometimes it looks appealing, we would be the third largest natural gas producer in the entire world. So our history is both rich in crude oil and natural gas development. And as we often say, you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And we've just had a tremendous amount of production in Ohio over these years, and it allows us to kind of tell that story. It's fascinating.
So the energy sector, I think, is under attack by government in a lot of ways. Certainly the oil and gas sector is, with a lot of folks focusing more on sort of the renewable energy and things like that. Despite all of that, oil and natural gas still, they're the 900-pound gorilla, right, in the sector. Like, America doesn't move without oil and natural gas. And, even if you have many of these renewables, you talk about wind, you still need a backup for when the wind isn't blowing. You still need a backup of oil or gas product for that. Talk about that a little bit and why that's important for us not to take our eye off the ball there, and make sure that we still, are producing in that oil and gas sector.
Well, Jeff, you hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, the oil and gas industry is under constant attack, and whether that be on the policy front, legislative front, regulatory front, I think there's just a number of elected officials that just get up and spend their day talking bad about our employees, our colleagues. And what they fail to recognize is not only are we the baseload power generation and the baseload transportation fuel, but we are so interconnected to those other sources that they like so much. What takes oil and gas to run a turbine? Everything. I mean, in order to get that wind turbine to its final destination, you load it on a diesel truck. Do you want that turbine to turn? Good, because you're going to need oil and grease to make sure that it does. And then on the flip side, too, oil and gas is very much related on our sites to renewables. I mean, many of our places down in the Holler have solar power to run telemetry or other devices. So we're all interconnected. We're all reliant on each other. And even if that weren't true, oil and gas can be refined into about 6,000 other products that are used in our everyday lives. The devices we're using to have this conversation are not only powered by natural gas and oil, but it's plastics, it's polymers, it's pharmaceuticals, it's rubbers, it's everything that we use in our daily lives that makes it creature comforts are based in crude oil and natural gas. So I think sometimes that's forgotten about. And even if we have some sort of, I don't want to call it energy transition, it's more like an energy addition. We're adding in wind, we're adding in solar, we're adding in geothermal. And look, that's all well and good, but understand that where your fuel comes from and where your heating comes from, and that's natural gas and oil.
Yeah, there seems to be this sort of the sense by some that you can just wave a magic wand and, we can transition an economy off of oil and gas. It just doesn't work that way. But while we're doing, sort of some crazy things in the industry in the United States, there's other countries like China and others that really don't seem overly concerned about what they're doing with oil and natural gas. They're not cutting back. They're not cutting back emissions or use on oil and natural gas. And it seems to be leaving America a little bit less competitive in some ways. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it is. And again, if you go back to if the environmental argument is the most important thing to you, well, then understand that American natural gas, American LNG or liquefied natural gas is often referred to as the biggest green initiative on the planet. Because if we can get other countries, particularly developing countries, on American gas, what does that do? Gets them off of Russian gas and Chinese gas and coal and other things. So if that's really what you want and that's your priority and that's what's the most important to you, then you should be our biggest ally, because nobody's going to help that situation out more than American LNG and American natural gas.
How have you seen the energy industry affect Ohio's economy? How does that happen? Go ahead and talk about that.
Tremendously. Yeah. I mean, Jeff, tremendously. You go back to when this shale play first started in the Utica in early 2010, 2011, when we went from, conventional wells, which are sort of vertical, shallow, low volume, low pressure wells, which has been our bread and butter since the 60s. And then these Utica wells started coming online, and now we're 3,000 or 4,000 wells. The production has just gone off the charts. But in order to make that production happen, we have about 208,000 employees in Ohio that are involved in all aspects of oil and gas industry. So we're a massive employer here in Ohio. And in order to put those employees to work, you have to build out that infrastructure. So the government data tells that a little over $100 billion has been invested in Ohio in the last 10 years to make this a reality. And so that's everything from drilling to pipelines, to refineries, to end use, and all of the other aspects that are involved. And so $1 billion, 200,000 people, that's a huge impact on the economy. And you can look at what we do in other sectors, whether that's agriculture, that's lowered costs for our friends that are farmers, propane to dry grain and other, diesel to run the tractor, all at a lower cost. You look at some of the other industries here in Ohio that have access to energy they didn't have before. And so not only are we able to invest a lot of money, employ a lot of folks, but we're interconnected to so many other agencies. And because we're producing so much, the cost has dropped. And so it's really affordable energy. And if you aren't persuaded by the environmental argument, perhaps it's the energy poverty argument that will catch your attention. And so what I mean by that is energy poverty is real poverty. If you have to spend the majority of your paycheck paying the heating bill and the lighting bill, that's going to really put you at a disadvantage. So if you have low energy cost, which the Utica has been able to provide here in Ohio, that allows for other opportunities for your family. So whether it's the investment argument or the environmental argument or addressing energy poverty, in a lot of ways, natural gas or the Utica is not the problem. It's the solution.
Yeah. This is one of the issues that I think hasn't been explained well. I think many people on the other side of the argument kind of exploit personal stories and things well, right? And talk about the environment and things. And look, we're all for a clean environment. And, it's a false choice to think we can't have oil and gas development without also having a clean environment. We can. And America, by the way, and Ohio proves it every day, right? But what about these families? We don't do a good job of telling the stories of, families that are struggling to make it and now have to pay higher prices for energy and for food, because food is transported. Part of that cost of transporting food is energy, the energy cost. But the cost of heating their home, the cost of gas, those things have all gone up. And what does that do to the average family that now has to choose about, do I get to go out and have 1 month or 1 day a month where I eat a dinner out, or can I buy my kids shoes? Can I take them, put them in, the scouting program? Those are choices that they're making. And and government is forcing them into making a bad decision on that. We aren't very good at telling those stories, it doesn't seem.
We are not very good at that. We need to do a better job in humanizing the industry. So at the end of the day, I can throw out investment numbers or jobs numbers, and we talk about those stats and data all the time. But the most powerful thing that I can tell people is that the two kids I told to be quiet right before we started recording this
right.
are more important to me than anything else. So our third grader and our preschooler who just got home and are getting situated after school, I'm not going to do anything to put their future at risk. So if I'm the voice and the spokesman of this industry, and I got 500 member companies that I represent, I'm in no way going to be a part of anything that's going to endanger their future or their lives or the air they breathe or the water they drink. So that's the best argument I have is I'm doing this because I believe in it. I'm doing this for their future. And I want to make sure that there are opportunities right here in Ohio that will keep them here. I don't want one child in Texas and the other one down in North Dakota because that's where I think the opportunities are. I want them here. And if we have low cost energy, that will inspire manufacturing, that will inspire agriculture, and all of the other really important industries that we have here in Ohio. And so any day that I'm not out talking about the people in this industry, that's a day not one. Any day that we're out looking at photos of rigs and pipelines versus Bill and Betty Buckeye that got money by leasing their minerals, that's a day not one. And so anytime we have an opportunity to talk about the employees that are in our industry that call here home, that drill here every day, that's a huge opportunity for us. So that's what we have in our toolkit to really push back against those that say, well, gee, I don't know. I'm worried about the air. Boy, I'm not sure. I'm worried about the water. And that's all that's, Jeff, sometimes that's all they have to say is, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, Congressman, I'm worried, I'm concerned, I'm uncertain, because that's what they rely on, right? That FUD factor, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Oftentimes, they don't even have to say anything beyond that. That's what we're working up against. I can say the jobs and the investment in my kids and all these employees, but that's what we have to push back against. That's what we have to address is that uncertainty, that fear, and that doubt.
Yeah. Government is great at creating barriers. And it's one of the things we talk about on this show all the time. The barriers that are created by government, whether it's inflation, which is a barrier, and that's caused by government spending too much money, or whether it's, stopping someone from reaching their potential and doing the career that they want because you've got some kind of a training program that they must complete in a state. But what are some of the regulations or the biggest barriers for the oil and gas industry in Ohio?
We have to look no further than the White House's pause on the LNG or liquefied natural gas exports. Look, if we're trying to help our friends in Ukraine and Europe and other places around the world, we got to get them our gas and get them off Russian gas. In order to do that, we got to liquefy it, put it on a boat, and get it over there. So I'm not sure what we have to think about. We can look back at the past administrations, both Trump and Obama, and they looked at the environmental and economic impact of liquefied natural gas, imports and exports and terminals. So we've thought about it. So when you hear the White House say, gee, I don't know, we got to think about it. What's there to think about? Again, if you care about the environment, let's get our gas to Europe and get them off those coal-fired power plants. If you care about, geopolitics and the lives lost in Ukraine, let's get them our gas. If you want jobs here at home, let's allow those producers to produce that gas that we can use here at home and ship other places around the world. So, Mr. President, what's there to think about? That's real frustrating. So that's maybe the most recent example of some of the barriers. And there are certainly others with pipeline projects. Every agency's got to look at it and they got to think about it for 5 years. And then they got to ask you one question that you answer. Then they got to take another 5 years to look at it. And we're not the only ones. Even our friends in wind and solar and geothermal and all energy sectors, there's a tremendous amount of barriers and red tape. And gee, we got to think about it when it comes to building out our energy infrastructure. And that's not even talking about the power lines that we're going to have to run all across this country to get the wind and solar where it's produced in places like Arizona and Kansas to places where it's used in New York and Chicago. We haven't even talked about putting up those power lines. So there's just reviews are important. Environmental reviews are important. It's absolutely part of the process, Jeff. No one is dismissing that. but let's get it done. And when the answer is given, let's move forward. And too often times it's, gee, I don't know, we got to think about it. And that's just not how you run a sector like the energy sector.
Right. The Ohio Oil and Gas Association, they teamed up with Americans for Prosperity to do some Prosperity is Possible events. What were some of those events that you did, and what was the reaction?
Well, we've just built so many new friends with our folks at Americans for Prosperity. It's a way to introduce that team to our team. Probably the first thing we did was invited them to our 77th annual meeting, because we've been around since 1947. And so we said, hey, why don't you come to the meeting, set up a booth. Let's talk to folks about what your messages are and some of the materials you have. And so we had 600 people at our annual meeting in March. And the team from AFP that came in just had a wonderful experience getting to know some of our smaller companies and some of our larger international companies. And from there, what we wanted to do is keep giving those messages to our producer community. And so we've asked, the AFP folks to write a few articles in our magazine called The Drill Bit. We've done a couple of tours together, because more important than that is to make sure that if anybody is out talking about the energy industry, they've seen it firsthand. They've talked to people that are working on drilling the rigs and well pads and pipeline projects. So it was a tremendous opportunity for us to bring the Americans for Prosperity folks on a field tour. Hey, let's go look at a well. Let me tell you how it works. Let me tell you how it's integrated into the community and the production. Where does that go? And let's go look at a well pad. Let's go look at a pipeline. And so that team was educated on the terminology, and they got to look people in the eye and say, what do you do? How do you protect human health and safety? And they were able to be given a straight answer from somebody who's done it every day. So for us, we got far more value out of them. And even though they had a great time, it was an opportunity for us to educate those folks on our industry and what we do and how we do it. So it's been an outstanding partnership. And frankly, the sky's the limit with an opportunity to keep working with them.
So how often do you do that? Do you ever do that with members of the general public or others? Take them out and show them a well, show them what you do in the energy sector. I think that's important.
Jeff, we could not give enough tours. We've taken, elected officials from the governor down to township trustees, landowners. I mean, those are our partners in this entire adventure. So there's a group called NARO, the National Association of Royalty Owners. You want to make sure that somebody knows what's going on their property. You bring the NARO folks out. Chambers of Commerce, port authorities, economic development groups, community improvement corps. Anybody under the sun that's going to be talking about energy and production and what's happening in the communities, we have absolutely showed them anything they want to see, because those are the best ambassadors. You bring out Bill and Betty Buckeye that have had a well on their property for 10 years, and their cows can graze and they can grow their corn. Maybe they got a new barn, new roof on the house. Those are our best ambassadors. And so if you have those individuals that are educated and engaged and they know what's going on, they feel comfortable to know what's going on, you just tell them, hey, set them loose, because they are great storytellers and they can tell you about the impact that's happened on their property. That's a powerful story.
Yeah, it seems, I always call it the false choice, the false narrative, the false choice of some folks on the left who kind of try and argue that you can either have a clean environment or you can do energy development. Talk about that, how you do it in Ohio, how we do it in America every single day, where we're environmentally responsibly extracting resources for our use. Talk about that a bit.
There's nothing more important than that. Nothing. Fundamentally, that's exactly what we have to do every single day. So whether you are a third generation mom and pop that's drilling in your own hometown, or you're an integrated super major that can drill all over the world, you either have your neighbors, your employees, your stockholders, your investors, all responsible for. So you have to make sure that you are doing everything right every single day. Now, on the other side, all they have to say is, see, I told you. So if there's one incident somewhere, anywhere, see, I told you. They have to be right once. We have to be right every single day. And so that's the accountability that we are under and frankly should be under. And that's why there's rules of the road on how and where and when you can drill and put in a pipeline and build a refinery and put a compressor station. this isn't a willy-nilly Wild West industry. It's extremely regulated, as it should be. It has got smart and fair regulations, as it should be. The challenge for us is that every time the wind blows, something changes. This is a commodity-based industry, meaning other people tell us the price for our product. And so when you have that kind of uncertainty, what we're looking for is that regulatory certainty so that we do have fair, common sense rules of the road. That will allow our operators to do what they do best, which is find, lift, and ship hydrocarbons for the betterment of our economy and our society. And so, I don't know that we fully understand why they try to push that narrative, because all I got to do is walk outside and see that the lights are on, the cars are running, and everything's okay. The trees are green, the flowers are blooming, the birds are buzzing. So look, folks, we can, should, and will continue to produce energy safely and responsibly for my benefit, your benefit, and everybody else's benefit.
And this is a quality of life issue. I mean, our quality of life as a nation, as a world, has been so enhanced by extracting energy and the use of energy. I mean, if you just look at the advancements of the last 100 years, that's all been driven really by the energy sector. Your thoughts on that?
Well, look at the, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia. I mean, that industrial Midwest part, right? Why were those factories all located here? Because they had energy. And so now in the Utica and the Marcellus and other formations, what is that allowing to do? A manufacturing renaissance. So compare that situation to maybe certain parts in Asia and Africa where they're still using, animal dung to try to heat their homes. And you can't just flick a switch to turn the light on. You don't have clean water because you can't process it. You can't ship it. So, we are such great situation here in the United States and Ohio compared to some of the others that have blackouts or rolling brownouts or don't have access to energy at all. I mean, think about the leap that they're going to have to take to burning wood to try to go to a wind turbine without going through oil and coal and gas and geothermal and hydro. And so having access to affordable, abundant, and reliable energy is not a given around the world. Unfortunately, there are millions and millions of people who don't know if the light switch is going to work when they flick it on, and don't know if the water going to come out of the tap that's run by the local water plant is going to work. And so we are very blessed to have that situation here in Ohio and in the Midwest in the United States. And that's what we want to make sure doesn't ever get put in jeopardy. Don't take it for granted that we have reliable energy. And the other thing that we tell folks that maybe oppose energy development is that's a careful balance between affordable, abundant, and reliable. And if you try to focus on one or the other, you may imbalance, and it may become affordable, but it's not reliable, or it may become reliable, but maybe it's not, abundant. And so those are three very careful concepts that have to be in balance for a place like the United States and hopefully someday the rest of the world to run an economy and to have clean, safe water and have a light switch work when you flick it on. So what we always tell people is please don't take that for granted.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great statement. I always end this show by talking about liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. And so that fits right into it. I think that's right. That's a great statement. I think most people don't think about it that way, that energy, abundant, affordable energy is there for us in America, and it's not there for everybody else in the world. And you talked about some of the places around the world that, they just are, their own lives have not been enhanced because they haven't been able to figure out how to provide energy to their people. And so that's great. Any final thoughts, Mike?
Well, listen, energy is dynamic. It's global. It can sometimes be political or partisan, and frankly, it shouldn't be. Energy is something we should all agree on. And so we're going to keep working every day to make sure that our producers and our communities have the energy that they need, the opportunities they need, because we are at the precipice of something really important. And that's, what's coming down the pike with hydrogen and carbon capture and other pipeline projects. And so what we've been able to accomplish is really impressive, from Thurl Makita, that first well in 1814, up through Rockefeller, up through the Utica Renaissance. It's a tremendous history, but it's also a really bright future. And I think we have a great argument to put forward on the economics, an even better argument on the environmental piece. And at the end of the day, our folks are just really good at what they're doing, which is providing abundant, affordable, reliable energy. And all we're asking for is an opportunity to keep doing that. And we believe that, as the tagline goes, prosperity is possible when energy is abundant and affordable and reliable. So just let us do what we do best.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you. And thanks for joining in the Prosperity is Possible tour with Americans for Prosperity. Appreciate that. Appreciate your time today.
You bet. And Jeff, don't forget, I'll be calling you soon. Next time I got an ice dive scheduled, you can join me and we'll go jump in the water and have a good time.
Yeah, I don't think so. You can call. I don't think my phone's ready to let that call go through, though. That's the problem. But thank you. I appreciate it, Mike.
Jeff, thank you for the time and the conversation, and appreciate the opportunity today.
All right. You bet. Well, like energy, liberty and freedom, easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there, defend liberty, defend freedom, defend energy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.